And we're continuing with the second chapter of Greenwitch by Susan Cooper. The Drews and Will and Merriman and Will's aunt and uncle are all going to share kind of a duplex of cottages. The Drew boys have decided that they do not like Will. Jane hasn't really made up her mind, and Merriman seems to be treating Jane kind of special. He gave her a special room that has a view, whereas the boys' room doesn't have a view. They heard a tapping on the wall that they think was their name in Morse code, and they thought Will was doing it, but it doesn't seem like something that Will would do. And we're beginning to learn about the Greenwitch of the title of this book, and it seems that it is some kind of a pagan ceremony because the housekeeper was very put off by being asked about it. She said that she really didn't hold with witches. So, we'll continue from the paragraph break. "What is this Greenwich affair, really, Gummery?" Simon said next morning. "Will told you." "All he knew was what he got out of some book." "He's going to be a nuisance, I'm afraid," Barney said with distaste. Merriman looked down at him sharply. "Never dismiss anyone's value until you know him." Barney said, I only meant—" "Shut up, Barney," said Jane. "The making of the Greenwich," said Merriman, "is an old spring rite still celebrated here for greeting summer and charming a good harvest of crops and fish. In a day or two, as it happens, you will all tread a little more gently. If you will all tread a little more gently, Jane might be able to watch it." "Jane?" said Barney. "Only Jane?" "The making of the Greenwich is very much a private village affair," Merriman said. Jane thought his voice seemed strained, but his face was so near the roof of the narrow landing as to be lost in shadow. "No visitors are normally allowed near, and of the locals only women are allowed to be present." "Good grief," said Simon in disgust. Jane said, "Surely we ought to be doing something about the Grail, Gummery. I mean, after all, that's why we're here, and we haven't got long." "Patience," Merriman said. "In Truissic, as you may recall, you never had to go looking for things to happen. They tended to happen to you." "In that case," Barney said, "I'm going out for a bit." He held the flat book in his hand, unobtrusively against his side, but his great uncle looked down from a height like a lighthouse. "Sketching?" he said. "Uh-huh," said Barney reluctantly. The Drew's mother was an artist. Barney had always expressed horror at the idea of possessing the same talent, but in the last 12 months he had been disconcerted to find it creeping up on him. "Try drawing this terrace from the other side," Merriman said, "with the boats as well." "All right. Why?" "Oh, I don't know," said his great-uncle vaguely. "It might come in handy, a present for someone. Perhaps even for me." Crossing the quay, Barney passed a man sitting at an easel. It was a common enough sight in Truissic, which, like many of the more picturesque villages in Cornwall, was much frequented by amateur painters. This particular artist had a very great deal of uncombed dark hair and a square, hefty frame. Barney paused and peeped over his shoulder. He blinked. On the easel was a wild, abstract, and crude bright colors bearing no visible relation at all to the scene in the harbor before them. It was unexpected compared to the neat, anemic little watercolors that 19 out of 20 Truissic harbor painters produced. The man was painting away like one demented. He said without pausing or turning around, "Go away." Barney lingered for a moment. There was real power in the painting, of a peculiar kind that made him oddly uneasy. "Go away," the man said more loudly. "I'm going," Barney said, moving one step backwards. "Why green up in that top corner, though? Why not blue? Or a better kind of green?" He was distressed by a lurid zigzag of a particularly nasty shade, a yellowy mustard-light green which drew the eye away from the rest of the picture. The man began to make a low rumbling like a growling dog, and the broad shoulders stiffened. Barney fled. He said to himself rebelliously, "But the color was all wrong." On the far side of the harbor he perched himself on a low wall, with the steep sliced rock of the headland at his back. The ill-tempered painter was invisible from there, hidden behind one of the inevitable piles of fish boxes on the quay. Barney sharpened a new pencil with his penknife and began to doodle. A sketch of a single fishing boat went badly, but a rough outline of the whole harbor began to turn out well, and Barney switched from pencil to an old-fashioned, soft-nibbed fountain pen, of which he was particularly fond. He worked fast then, pleased with the drawing, absorbed in its detail, sensing the awareness, still new this spring, that something of himself was going out through his fingers. It was a kind of magic coming up for air. He paused and held the drawing out at arm's length, and without a sound, a large, dark-sleeved hand came from one side and seized the sketch pad. Before Barney could turn his head, he heard a noise of ripping paper, then the pad was flung back at his feet, tumbling over itself on the ground. Footsteps ran. Barney leapt with an indignant shout and saw a man running away up the quayside, the page from the sketch pad flapping white against his dark clothes. It was the long-haired, bad-tempered painter he had seen on the quay. "Hey!" Barney yelled, furious. "Come back!" Without a glance behind, the man swung round the end of the harbor wall. He was a long way away, and the harbor path sloped uphill. Barney came tearing up just in time to hear a car engine snarl into life and roar away. He whirled round the corner into the road and ran smack into someone walking up the hill. "Ugh!" grunted the stranger, as the breath was thumped out of him. Then his voice came back. "Barney?" It was Will Stanton. "A man!" gasped Barney, staring around him. "A man in a dark sweater." "A man came running up from the harbor just ahead of you," Will said, frowning. "He jumped into a car and drove off that way." He pointed down into the village. "That was him," Barney said. He peered restlessly at the empty road. Will looked too, fiddling with his jacket zipper. He said with astonishing force, "Stupid of me, stupid. I knew there was something, just not properly awake. Thinking of—" He shook his head as if tossing something away from it. "What did he do?" "He's loopy, mad." Barney could still scarcely speak for indignation. "I was sitting there, sketching, and he just came up from nowhere, ripped the drawing out of my book and belted off with it. What would any normal person do that for?" "Did you know him?" "No, well, that is, I'd seen him, but only today. He was sitting down on the quay painting at an easel." Will smiled broadly, a silly smile, Barney thought. "Sounds as though he thought your picture was better than his." "Oh, come off it," Barney said impatiently. "Well, what was his picture like?" "Weird, very peculiar." "There you are, then." "There I am not. It was weird, but it was good, too, in a nasty sort of way." "Goodness me," Will said, looking vacant. Barney glared at his round face, with its thick brown fringe of hair, and felt more irritated than ever. He began trying to think of an excuse to get away. "He had a dog in the car," Will said absent-mindedly. "A dog? Barking like anything. Didn't you hear it? And jumping about. It nearly jumped out when he got in. Hope it didn't chew up your drawing." "I expect it did," Barney said coldly. "Lovely dog," Will said in the same vague, dreamy tone. "One of those long-legged Irish setters. A super reddish color. No decent man would shut a dog like that up in a car." Barney stood stock still, looking at him. There was only one dog like that in Trewesick. He realized suddenly that directly across the road he could see a tall, familiar gray house. At the same moment, a gate at the side of the house swung open and a man came out. A stout, elderly man with a short gray beard, leaning on a stick. Standing in the road, he put his fingers in his mouth and gave a sharp two-note whistle. Then he called, "Rufus! Rufus!" Impulsively, Barney ran toward him. "Captain Toms! You are Captain Toms, aren't you? Please, look, I know Rufus. I helped look after him last summer, and I think someone's stolen him. A man went off with him in a car, a dark man with long hair, an awful man." He paused. "Of course, if it was someone you know—" The man with the beard looked carefully at Barney. "No," he said deliberately. "I don't know a gentleman of that description, but you do seem to know Rufus. And by that hair of yours, I fancy you'd maybe be Merriman's youngest nephew. One of my tenants last year, eh? The children with the sharp eyes." "That's right," Barney beamed. "I'm Barnabas, Barney." But something puzzled him about Captain Tom's manner. It was almost as if he were carrying on some other conversation at the same time. The old man was not even looking at him. He seemed to be gazing blankly at the surface of the water, seeing nothing, lost in his own mind. Barney suddenly remembered Will. He turned and saw to his astonishment that Will, too was standing near him, staring vacantly at nothing, expressionless as if listening. What was the matter with everybody? "This is Will Stanton," he said loudly to Captain Tom's. The bearded face did not change expression. "Yes," said Captain Tom's gently. Then he shook his head and seemed to wake up. "A dark man, you said?" "He was a painter, very bad-tempered. I don't know who he was or anything, but Will saw him going off with a dog who sounded just like Rufus and just outside your door." "I will make inquiries," Captain Tom said reassuringly. "But come in, both of you. You shall show your friend the grey house, Barnabas. I must find my key. I was busy in the garden." He felt in his pockets, patting at his jacket ineffectually with the arm not leaning on the stick. Then they were in the front door. "The door's open," Will said sharply. His voice was crisp, very different from his inane babbling a few moments ago, and Barney blinked. Captain Tom's pushed the half-open door with his stick and stumped inside. "That's how the fellow got Rufus out. Opened the front door while I was round back. I still can't find that key." He began fumbling in his pockets again. Following him in, Barney felt something rustle at his feet. He bent, picked up a sheet of white paper. "You didn't pick up your—" He stopped abruptly. The note was very short and in large letters. He could not help taking it in at a glance. He held it out to the captain, but it was Will, this strange, brisk Will, who took the paper and stood staring at it with the old man. The two heads close, young and old, brown and gray. The note was made of large black capital letters cut from a newspaper and stuck very neatly together on the sheet. It said, "If you want your dog back alive, keep away from the Greenwitch." And that's the end of chapter 2.